Now, finally, it's my pleasure to introduce Nick Hurd, Chair of GSG Impact and the Impact Task Force.
Said when asking you to identify yourselves, didn't have a category friend of Ronnie, but you can't all be friends of Ronnie. And it allows me to listen to this very carefully, an important point. Ronnie has shown extraordinary leadership in making this argument over many years, but it is now not just about Ronnie. Ronnie continues to pedal furiously down this road, but there is now a peloton that's growing. Different shades of lycra, but all heading in the same direction, and that matters enormously. And GSG Impact, which I chair, and the task force that I chair with many friends in this room, are really delighted to support this. And I'm here really to say what we intend to do next, and in doing so, challenge you to think about what you're going to do next. But I was listening here also through my lens, which is that of having been a government minister for 9 years, including our climate minister in the UK, and feeling very strongly that David Blood was right to set the context very clearly here. We are failing. We are failing on climate. We're even further behind on the SDGs, and Seb's challenge around where we are in 3 years' time. We'll be playing catch-up. And I think we will be confronting the reality that we have not done enough to change systems. And our view at GSG is that arguably the most important system in our economy is the system that takes decisions on where we allocate our resources. And we know, and you know, that that system, like most systems, is full of inertia and difficult to shift. But the circumstances and the context are going one way, with increasing pressure and importance to this change. And I think the politicians and the class that I was part of for many years will increasingly recognize this, because the funding gaps are extreme, and the fundamental reality is there will never be enough public money. And therefore the political class will be increasingly interested in what they have to do to mobilize more private capital. And if you doubt that, the British government, when they had the G7 presidency, asked us at GSG to set up a task force to look at exactly this question. How do we increase the volume and effectiveness of private capital looking to make a positive impact on the climate goals and the SDGs? And part of our theory of change, through a working group led by Douglas Peterson, the CEO of S&P Global, was to set out a roadmap for impact transparency, because we felt impact transparency was a really important part of the theory of change. Transparency is a nice word. It's a comfortable word. Actually, I prefer the word accountability. And the roadmap we set out started with where the conversation is now, about the very necessary discussion around the development and deployment of hopefully harmonious standards of disclosure. And we're in that conversation and playing our part with a message that this can't be dominated by rich countries and big companies. We need to bring emerging economies and small businesses into that conversation. That's where the conversation is now. But Ronnie and others, and we've supported it in this community, said the context requires us to look further down the road and get faster to the ultimate destination, which is a world in which companies account, I would say, and governments as well, account for their impact in a meaningful way. And that goes beyond where the conversation is now. It's about putting a monetary value on impact and building it into financial statements so that climate is on the balance sheet, nature is on the balance sheet, because that's what moves us. Whether we like it or not, that's the world we're in, and that's the direction we're moving at. And this is enormously disruptive, because this is about a world in which those taking investment decisions, whether they're in government, investment committees, institutions, or in boardrooms, are increasingly accountable for their impact. And with that is an enormous transfer of power. And we shouldn't underestimate that. And I think this is coming, which is why we're incredibly proud to support this work. But what next? We've all been in situations, we all probably work in organizations that collect data, full of data, inboxes full of data, information overload everywhere. The challenge now is how to make people understand that this information, these methodologies are useful, relevant, and important, and are understood. And I think that is a role where GSG Impact, the organisation that I'm very, very proud to chair, and the Impact Task Force that we set up, can play an extremely important role. We're doing it at the moment with where the debate is now, because we're helping countries around the world and our stakeholders around the world understand what disclosure means, understand what the ISSB is going on about. And we found that we can add enormous value in that respect. And we want to do, and it's Seb who will lead this work for us, to do the same in relation to impact accounting and understanding how these methodologies can be used. And you all know, because many of you are change makers, you have to build the coalitions of the ambitious, the coalitions of the brave. And that's what we'll be doing, country by country across our network, 44 countries in our network, ecosystems in each country, working together to break down the silos, to help facilitate that conversation about what is needed to allow the capital to flow into areas where it's most needed to have a positive impact and make an impact on the SDGs and the climate goals. And that's the contribution that we will make from now on, because it's all about implementation. It's all about people using it, taking it up, persuading the data platforms that this is increasingly a part of decision-making in the investment world. That's our contribution, Ronnie, which we will continue to do. And I encourage you to think about what you're going to do next. Let me close. George touched a chord with everyone. We've all been Ronnied, and many of us have been Ronnied in different ways over the years. And I meant what I say. I think what is particularly important today is the peloton and the fact that this is now a movement, Ronnie, and many organisations now working together who see the importance of this. But we should just take a moment to salute you, Ronnie. I'm British, and there's a very famous sitcom in the UK called Yes Minister. It was written as a comedy, but is in fact a documentary. And there's a very, very famous scenes in there where the minister of the day, fired up with enormous enthusiasm for his, because in those days it was him, vision, or the big idea that he had, and he presented it to his civil servants, and then they would suck their teeth and say, "Oh, that's very brave, Minister." And the word brave was designed to inspire terror. And the bugle would retreat and the minister would move on. But people have been saying, "Oh, that's brave, Ronnie," for a long time. And when Ronnie hears that, he just, "Thank you," and just keeps going. Further, faster. And if you hadn't, Ronnie, many of us in this room wouldn't be here, joining you on this journey. But we wouldn't have achieved what we've achieved. And now be in a position, a packed room in Harvard Club, BT talking seriously about the next stage of changing one of the most important systems in our economic system, one that has to change if we're to move the money, which is what we all want to do. Ronnie, would you please join me in showing our respect and appreciation for the work that Ronnie has done?